Part 1, opening. The moment he hit rock bottom. There are moments in life when you don't need anyone to tell you you've hit rock bottom. You can feel it with your own exhausted body. It was that night when the rain started falling, cold wind slapping against his face, and the young man was struggling on his old motorbike to finish the last delivery of the day, 14 hours on the road, soaked from jacket to shoes, stomach empty, and the money in his pocket not even enough for a proper meal. The streetlights reflected off the puddles, as if they were exposing the fragility of his life. Every time he stopped in front of a brightly lit cafe, he saw people inside laughing, talking, working, dreaming, and he wondered what part of himself he had lost long ago. He received the order slip from the staff, who didn't even look him in the eye. A customer inside yelled because the drink was a few minutes late. He bowed and apologized, even as rainwater and tears blurred together until he couldn't tell which was which. It wasn't the harsh words that hurt the most. What hurt the most was the feeling of having no value. He never told anyone that he once dreamed of opening his own small cafe, a place filled with the comforting aroma of roasted beans and the steady hum of a grinder. He used to think the dream was too far out of reach for someone who survived day to day on a motorbike. Life felt like a loop with no exit. Waking up, riding until exhaustion, coming back to a damp rented room, sleeping a few hours, then repeating it again. But that night, as the rain poured harder, he stopped under the awning of a cafe to take shelter. The warm yellow light spilled out from inside. The sound of grinding beans echoed steadily, and the scent drifted gently into the air. He stood there cold, hungry, tired, but for the first time in months, he was still, not rushing, not avoiding, not running. In that moment, he realized a truth everyone knows, but very few are brave enough to accept. If he didn't change his life, no one would do it for him. Not because he wasn't smart enough, not because he wasn't worthy, but because he had never given himself the chance. That night, in the sound of falling rain and the warm glow of the cafe ahead, he hit rock bottom, but he also saw the first spark of the journey that would take him upward. Part 2, the breaking point, the seed of a decision. After that rainy night, even though he didn't say it out loud, something inside him had shifted like a small door quietly opening in the darkness. But the real turning point came on an ordinary day, in a moment so simple it almost felt insignificant. That day, he received an order to deliver water to a tiny cafe tucked deep inside a small alley. When he stepped into the shop, he saw a barista standing before the espresso machine, his hands moving with effortless precision, as if he had done this 1,000 times. The coffee flowed in a smooth, silky stream, and the aroma wrapped the entire space in a warm, almost magical atmosphere. In that little corner, everything felt still completely different from the chaos he battled outside every single day. He froze for a few seconds, quietly watching. He didn't know why, but the feeling was both familiar and foreign, as if his heart was recognizing something it had long desired but never dared to admit. When the barista turned around, he found himself asking a question he didn't even know he had the courage to ask. How do you make a cup of coffee taste that good? The barista looked at him for a moment, then smiled, not with arrogance, not with the condescending glance he was used to receiving, but with genuine kindness. He replied softly, "You start by caring, not caring about beans or machines or recipes, but caring about how you feel when creating something, caring about the person who will drink that cup, caring about the journey you're shaping with your own hands." Just one simple sentence, but it awakened something inside him that had been asleep for far too long. The belief that he could become someone greater than the life he was trapped in. When he returned to his tiny rented room, he was so energized he almost forgot he was tired. He opened YouTube and watched dozens of videos, roasting, extraction, pour-over techniques, latte art, knowledge he used to think belonged only to people on another level, now made his heart race with excitement. In that cramped room, barely big enough for a bed, he whispered to himself, "If others can do it, why can't I?" That thought, fragile as it was, became the very first seed of transformation. No one knew that in that moment. He was touching the spark that would carry him far beyond limitations, beyond poverty, beyond the self-doubt that had clung to him for years. That night, he opened a notebook and wrote the first line of his new journey. Day 1, begin again from zero. Part 3, the learning phase, self-taught in the dark. After writing the line, Day 1, begin again from zero, he was no longer the same. Not because he had suddenly become special, but because for the first time in his life, he allowed himself to hope. His 2 square meter rented room became the smallest laboratory in the world. No espresso machine, no professional tools, no premium beans, just a rusty $1 filter bought from a night market, a bag of cheap coffee, and an old notebook stained yellow from rain. But to him, that was a beginning. Every night, after 14 hours of riding through the city, he returned in sweat-soaked clothes. So tired his legs trembled, yet he still sat down at his wobbly wooden desk and brewed his first cup of the night. Not to drink, but to learn. He tried everything, pouring fast, then slow, changing grind size, using hotter water, then cooler, writing down every flavor, every mistake, every tiny detail. Each time the coffee tasted terrible, he didn't get frustrated. He simply added another line to his notebook. What is this failure trying to teach me? There were nights when the whole building had gone dark, yet he remained there, eyes aching with fatigue, but a heart brighter than ever. In that darkness, he discovered something crucial to change your life. You must first be disciplined with yourself. He set a goal for himself, 1 skill a day, 1 small improvement, whether it was the way he poured water, the way he smelled the beans, or simply recognizing what he did wrong. No one saw that journey. No one knew about the nights he replayed foreign barista videos over and over, not understanding most of the English, but memorizing their hand movements. No one knew he sometimes brewed 7 or 8 cups in a row, drank until he felt nauseous from the bitterness, yet woke up the next morning ready to learn again. To everyone else, he was just a poor delivery driver. But in that tiny room, he was planting the first seeds of a much bigger dream. And those nights shaped the version of himself he would become. Quiet, but persistent. Humble, but relentless. Unguided, but unstoppable. He wasn't born with talent. He only had one thing: repetition. He repeated everything until his hands knew the motions, until the smell of coffee clung to his hair, until the skills were no longer something he struggled to learn, but something he simply was. In the darkness of that small room, he didn't realize this. Every terrible cup brought him closer to his first perfect one, and every night of self-study was laying the foundation for a future he never imagined he could build. Part 4, the experimental phase, the zero dung coffee shop. After nearly a month of practicing in his cramped 12 square meters room, he realized something important. Learning alone wasn't enough. He needed real drinkers. He needed feedback. He needed to know whether the flavors he created could actually touch someone. But he had no money to open a cafe, no fancy equipment, no beautiful storefront. He only had a tiny rented room and a dream he still didn't dare say out loud. So he transformed that small, cluttered room into his own zero dung coffee shop. No signboard, no tables, no menu, only one simple sentence. An oi, am dang tap fa, an jup em du kang. Hey, I'm practicing. Could you try this for me? On the first evening, he invited 2 people, the building security guard and a fellow delivery rider. He brewed each cup with all the seriousness he had. No charge. He only asked for one thing: honest feedback. Too bitter, a bit weak, a little sour. Words that could discourage anyone else. But to him, they were gold. He wrote everything down in his notebook. Adjust water amount for. Change grind size. Modify extraction time. The next day, try again. And just like that, his zero dung cafe began spreading without any marketing. One person tried it and told another. The landlady peeked in to taste. The mechanic from the alley wandered over out of curiosity. Another delivery rider said, "Hey, I heard you brew better than the cafe down the street. Make me one." He almost didn't believe it, but every comment made his chest warm. In that tiny room, where only 3 people could stand at once. He was creating something he once only dared to dream. Coffee made by him, genuinely enjoyed by others. He set a new nightly goal. Invite at least 3 people to try his coffee. Not to be famous, not to show off, but to understand people, their habits, their tastes, their emotional reactions to coffee. Some days he brewed nearly 20 cups, ran out of beans, and had to borrow money to buy more. Some days he was exhausted after 14 hours of deliveries, yet still forced himself to brew that last cup near midnight. Hot nights he experimented with cold brew in an old plastic bottle. Cold nights he tested caramel, milk, espresso combinations to see who liked what. That poor little room became an experimental cafe, a laboratory, a training ground, the birthplace of his first coffee identity. One night, after weeks of experimenting, the security guard took a sip and said, "This one is good, really good. Not flattery, not politeness, a genuine reaction." That moment made him stop for a few seconds. His chest heated up, his eyes stung. Not because the coffee was good, but because for the first time after years of darkness, he felt he had done something truly meaningful. With nothing but a rusty filter, a tiny room, and a heart that refused to give up, the Zero Dome coffee shop turned a poor delivery rider into someone brave enough to dream big. Because in the end, it isn't the fancy shop or the money that makes a barista. It's how they begin, even if that beginning is from zero, from a humble room, from a dream held quietly in the dark. Part 5, the big decision, leaving stability to step into risk. The small success from his Zero Dome cafe made him happy, but that happiness wasn't enough to pay rent, wasn't enough to free him from the exhausting routine of delivery work day after day. Every morning he still woke up to non-stop order notifications. He still rode under the scorching sun and the pouring rain. He still endured unreasonable customers shouting at him, still felt trapped in a loop with no end in sight. But every evening, when the door of his little room shut behind him, he picked up his filter again. And in that moment, he was no longer a delivery boy. He was a brewer, a creator, a man building something that belonged entirely to him. Gradually, these two worlds began to clash. One world drained him just so he could survive. The other made him feel alive. Then one night, while brewing the 7th cup of the day for the neighborhood mechanic, the man said something that made him freeze. "Why don't you open a real cafe? People out there make worse coffee than you and still have customers." He laughed it off, but that sentence clung to him all night. It echoed with every heartbeat. Why don't I open one? Not because he thought he was great, but because he began to fear something else more than failure. A lifetime of regret if he never tried. There was only one problem. He had almost no money. After days of thinking, he made a decision his friends would call insane. He stopped delivering for a while to try opening a cafe. It sounded simple, but for a poor man, it was a decision that could change everything. If he failed, he wouldn't have rent money, wouldn't have food money, wouldn't have a way to survive. If he succeeded, it would be the first step toward the dream he had carried silently for years. He spent a week calculating every dung he had saved. Total 12 million VND, a tiny amount to start a cafe, but the biggest amount he had ever owned. There were nights he lay awake until 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, asking himself, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? But then a voice rose from deep within. If you don't try, you'll stay a delivery boy forever. If you try, you have a chance to become anything. So he decided not just to open a cafe, but to finally believe in himself. He found a small corner in a quiet alley, just 6 square meters, enough for a wooden table, a used espresso machine bought from an acquaintance, a few plastic stools, and a warm yellow light bulb. With no money for a proper sign, he hand-painted a cardboard board. Homemade coffee, real flavor. The day he hung the sign, his hands trembled. Not from fear of failure, but because for the first time in his life, he was stepping out of his comfort zone. Friends said he was reckless. Acquaintances said opening a cafe at this time was a guaranteed failure. Some people smirked. You think passion alone can keep you alive. He wasn't angry. He simply thought, they're right. Passion isn't enough. But passion plus discipline plus courage to begin equals can change a life. On opening day, there were no balloons, no crowds, no ads. Just him standing behind his tiny counter, wearing an old apron, holding his first cup of coffee, and with all the belief left in his heart, he whispered to himself, from today on, I am no longer a delivery boy. I am someone starting again from zero. Part 6, the hard times, when the dream almost died. The first days of opening a cafe are a series of challenges no one prepares you for. You imagine crowds coming in and out, the aroma of coffee filling your tiny space, the steady hum of the milk frother, but reality is far colder. In the first week, you sold barely 10 cups a day. There were rainy days when the streets were empty. Your cardboard sign was soaked and no one stepped inside. That day, you sold only 3 cups a number, so painful you didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Rent still needed to be paid. Supplies still had to be bought. And the shop was so quiet you could hear the wall clock ticking, each second reminding you that things were not going the way you hoped. There were moments you asked yourself, did I make the wrong choice? Am I fighting for something hopeless? Many nights, you sat alone in the shop, the warm yellow light casting shadows across dusty wooden stools. You opened your notebook, calculated every last dung, then crossed everything out again because you had no idea how you were going to survive the next month. There were nights you had to go back to delivering in the rain, your raincoat clinging cold against your body, your hands shaking while trying to keep a cup of hot coffee steady for a customer. In those moments, quitting felt strangely reasonable, even comforting. If you closed the shop tomorrow, all the pressure would disappear. But in those moments when giving up felt easiest, you remembered who you used to be. The version of yourself who worked jobs with no future, who was exhausted to the point of insomnia, who stood in the middle of life feeling worthless and invisible. And you whispered to yourself a sentence that would later become your life's vow. If I quit now, I'll go back to the place that hurt me the most. It wasn't a heroic declaration, it was a raw truth. You knew clearly the pain of failing after trying was still gentler than the pain of living a life you never chose. So you stood back up. You opened the shop again the next morning. You straightened every stool, wiped every surface, and brewed every batch, like today was the most important day. Selling only 3 cups was no longer an excuse to give up, but a reminder that every journey from zero is crooked, slow, and demands more than you ever imagined. But as long as you haven't given up, your story isn't over. Part 7, the turning point. A 15-second TikTok that changed everything. Life is strange. Sometimes you fight for months and nothing changes. And then, out of nowhere, a tiny, ordinary moment, one you could easily overlook, ends up shifting the entire course of your destiny. That day was just like any other. Soft sunlight, a quiet shop. You were still brewing coffee with all the patience and hope you had left. A stranger walked in simple clothes, a backpack, the look of a student or a young wanderer who enjoyed discovering hidden cafes. You had no idea he was holding the key to a new chapter of your life. He ordered a latte. You made it like always, carefully, slowly, with sincerity. When you handed him the cup, he suddenly asked, "You do all of this by yourself? For such a small shop, you're really meticulous." You just smiled and replied, "The smaller the shop, the better I need to do, so people will come back." You didn't know that one sentence moved him enough to pull out his phone and start recording. No fancy lighting, no studio setup, no planning. Just a few seconds capturing your tiny shop, a barista doing everything by hand, and a simple, honest cup of coffee. The video was under 15 seconds. That evening, you closed the shop and went home as usual. You didn't know that somewhere on TikTok, that video had begun to spread. 1 hour, then 2, then 10. The algorithm pushed it out to thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of viewers. Comments poured in. Cute vibe. I'll visit tomorrow. Support small cafes. The next morning, when you opened the shop, you found a group of young people waiting outside. They smiled. "We saw your TikTok video, came to try your coffee." You thought they were joking. But then the second customer arrived, then the third, and soon a steady stream of people. In 2 days, sales increased 5-fold. In 1 week, you had to ask for help. The dusty tables were now filled with laughter, conversations, and the rich aroma of coffee swirling through the air. A single video, just 15 seconds, changed the fate of one human being. But to you, the most meaningful thing wasn't going viral. It was the validation that all the nights you persisted, even when no one was watching, were never wasted. Every cup you made with heart, every late night practice session, every moment you held on to your dream when it was flickering, all of it was finally answered. As the shop grew busier each day, you realized something you would later tell many others. TikTok didn't make me successful. All those months of not giving up are what allowed me to meet that moment. And the story is far from over. Part 8, building a brand. Turning passion into a model. When the shop started getting crowded, many people assumed you had gotten lucky because of one viral video. But you knew very well a viral clip can bring people in once. Keeping them coming back is a completely different story. Viral brings attention, but only real value creates trust. So you began building your shop not just as a cafe, but as a brand with a soul. You spent many nights sitting alone in the shop, writing and rewriting names. You wanted a name that didn't just speak about coffee, but about your journey, the journey that rose from zero, from days you sold only 3 cups, from nights you rode through storms to deliver drinks, from moments you almost collapsed. Finally, you chose the name that made your heart tremble. From zero coffee, not to show how hard your past was, but so that anyone who walked in would feel this truth. Every dream deserves the right to begin at zero. Even if you're broke, unemployed, leaving a bad job, or standing at a crossroads in life, you still deserve a chance to start again. You wrote your brand message into one sentence, a sentence customers kept repeating. Everyone deserves a fresh start from zero. But a brand isn't built from slogans. A brand is built from people. So when you hired your very first staff member, you didn't ask about barista experience. You didn't ask whether they knew how to use a machine. You asked only one question. Are you sincere? Because you believe this skills can be taught. Sincerity cannot. You built your team from young people who were willing to listen, willing to learn, willing to pour their heart into each cup, just like you did in the beginning. You created one principle, a principle that later became the soul of your entire shop. Brew as if it's the first cup you ever made in that tiny rented room. This formula wasn't about technique, it was about emotion. The first time you brewed a cup in that cramped room, you poured into it all your hope, care, precision, and dreams. You wanted every staff member, every future branch, to keep that same energy, the spark of the first day, from these small details. From zero coffee slowly became a model, not just a cafe. You were no longer selling coffee, you were selling a story. You were no longer serving customers, you were serving people who were also on their own journey of finding themselves again. Your shop became a place where young people stopped by to feel something positive, the energy of those who dare to begin again to you. A brand isn't a fancy sign, a gorgeous decor, or a complicated marketing campaign to you. A brand is simply a reminder there was once someone who stood up from zero, and you can, Part 9, success. But never forgetting where you started. 3 years passed so quickly that sometimes you still can't believe any of it is real. From a tiny shop that once sold only 3 cups on a rainy day, from zero coffee now has 4 branches, each one crowded, warm with light, buzzing with grinders, and filled with the laughter of young customers. You've appeared in newspapers, been invited to speak at startup events, and people now call you the symbol of rising from zero. Some even say you became successful overnight. You just smile because you know that one night lasted 3 years and was soaked in tears. But what makes you proud isn't the revenue, not the number of branches, not the shiny titles the media uses when they mention you. What makes you proud is that every morning, when you step into the shop, you still stand behind the counter and brew the first cup of the day with your own hands. Not because you lack staff, not because no one else can do it, but because it's the only way you remind yourself why you began. You understand that success is a double-edged sword. It can lift you, but it can also make you forget your starting point. So you keep a small ritual for yourself. Every morning, before anyone arrives, you turn on the lights, switch on the machine, and brew a cup exactly like the ones you used to make in that tiny rented room years ago. The warm aroma rises and instantly pulls you back to those nights you stood at a crossroads. Those evenings when you thought you might have to shut the shop. Those moments when you were on the verge of tears, but still forced to smile for your customers. You remember the first TikTok comments. You remember the first customers who patiently sat in a nearly empty shop. You remember how selling just one cup used to feel like winning a prize because it meant someone believed in you, believed in the flavor you created, believed in the story you were telling with your own hands. When you opened your 4th branch, everyone around you celebrated, but you fell silent for a moment. You didn't think about the number 4. You thought about the number 0. You thought about yourself back then, the version who wondered whether he could survive one more failure. And you whispered to him, "Thank you for not giving up." Not forgetting your starting point isn't about holding yourself in the past. It's about reminding yourself that every success is built on days that once felt hopeless. You understand now. When you rise from the bottom, you appreciate every small step, and perhaps that very gratitude is what keeps From Zero Coffee alive with its soul in a city full of new signs that appear and disappear overnight. During your expansion, you always tell new staff, we're not just selling coffee. We're serving a belief that everyone has the right to start again. Success hasn't erased your humility. If anything, it has deepened it, because you know that everything you have today grew from tiny seeds planted on those first days. Days when you were scared, alone, trembling, yet still chose to continue. And you also know, if one day you forget why you started, everything you've built will lose its soul. Part 10, the final message. Anyone can rise from zero. At the end of the journey, when you look back at the years you've walked through, from a rented room as small as a bed, from the days you sold only 3 cups, from the nights you stood in the rain delivering orders just to keep the shop alive, you realize the most precious thing isn't the success, isn't the viral moment, isn't the 4 bright, bustling branches. The most precious thing is understanding one simple, powerful truth. Anyone, truly anyone, has the right to rise from zero. You want to send this message to the people standing where you once stood, to the lost, the exhausted, the ones carrying dreams they're afraid to admit, the ones shaking at the thought of starting over, the ones who want to move forward but feel failure tugging at them, the ones who watch others run ahead while they feel stuck at the starting line. And you want to tell them, with everything you've lived, no 2 beginnings are the same. Some are born on a smooth track. Some start in the darkest corner of life's map. Some have supportive families. Some have nothing but themselves. Life is unfair at the starting line. But it becomes fair in one thing. Everyone has the right to begin. You don't need extraordinary talent. You don't need abundant money. You don't need a golden opportunity. You don't need luck knocking on your door. You only need to start with what you have, where you are, using the hands you already own. You want those drowning in failure to understand that failure is not the end. It is the foundation of every real beginning. You want them to know that successful people aren't the best. They are simply the ones who did not quit, even when their dream looked ridiculous. You share your story not to boast, but to prove that you don't need perfection, you just need authenticity. You don't need speed, you just need to keep going. You don't need everything, you just need to start with one thing you believe in. And you end your journey with a sentence that later became the spirit of your entire brand. Rise from Zero isn't my story, it's a story anyone can write. Because if a delivery boy who once stood in the darkest moment of his life can rise into the light from zero, then so can you. There is no starting point too late, no setback too meaningless, no dream too small for a first step. You only need to begin. Everything else, the path, the opportunities, the growth, will find its way to you in ways you could never imagine. That is what Rise from Zero truly means.